Hey, what's going on guys? My name's Divine and today we're going to be taking a look at V Rising. Now, this video will be focusing on the top 10 things I feel that you need to know in the early stages of this game, since really the tutorial doesn't teach you a lot of things I think you should know, and I feel like this will make your experience just that much better. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Alright, so first up is tip number 1, and that is going to be keeping all of your items and don't drop them while you're out and about. Now, you're going to have an inventory that probably is going to look something like mine on the screen here, where you're just going to have items galore and you're going to feel like you need to throw stuff on the ground just so you can keep going. But my biggest thing for you guys is just hold on to those items, build chests, store everything you possibly can, because it's going to be very beneficial to you in the long run. I can already tell you I've thrown away a lot of materials I felt like could have saved me a lot of time later on after you start unlocking different crafting tables, different recipes, things of that nature. So that's going to be my first tip. So let's just jump over to tip number 2. Alright, so for tip number 2, that is going to be following along with whatever your current quest or journal is saying in the upper left hand corner there. So my current one says soul stones and to construct and interact with an Eye of Twilight. Now this is how you're going to really progress throughout the game. You're going to learn new recipes from doing this, and it's really just telling you what to do and kind of progress along your game, which is pretty nice. Now there's going to be things early on you might get stuck on where it's going to just tell you to obtain leather. And that's where you can just open up your mini map here, and after you've discovered an area, you can just hover over these little yellow patches on the map, and it'll actually tell you where you can find these materials. So let's just move on to tip number 3. Since we're on the topic of maps here, what I wanted to show you guys is while you're traversing throughout the land, so we're just going to start running here, or we can actually go into wolf form, or if you're on a horse, it really doesn't matter. As long as you're traversing the world, you can actually open up your map and continue running. Now you see my arrow right there. You can see that it's still moving. We can move left, right, kind of go anywhere you want. As long as you're clicking and holding with the mouse, you can actually hit M again, and you can kind of twist around, and you can see how I can move my character. So it's just another way. We don't really have an overlay of the map of the game, but it's just a nice little feature you can do. So on to tip number 4, and you just saw my previous tip where I turned into a wolf. What I wanted to show you is you actually have multiple forms for your vampire character. Like you saw me move into the wolf form. If you beat this V Rising boss, which is level 16, you gain these powers. Now you can come over here to your blood altar. You can also press O on your keyboard at any time, and you can kind of see all these different V Rising bosses and what kind of powers they're going to give you. So some of the few things that you can get are wolf form, you can get bear form, you can get the ability to kind of give people into a trance so that you can bring them in as servants. So it's just another feature you kind of want to be aware of, that you have these abilities if you hold down the control button that you can morph into. Especially early stages in the game, this wolf form will save you quite a bit of time traveling around. Alright, so on to tip number 5. Now we're going to be taking a look at all the different blood types in the game. Now we have 6 different options here. We have the worker, the scholar, the rogue, warrior, brute, and creature. Now all of these are going to give you bonuses depending on the quality of blood that you drink off of the enemy, but one of these types is one I really want to highlight, and that is going to be the worker blood type. Now you might not stumble across this early game, but I would say mid-tier game level is when you'll start to find these workers in the upper northeast corner of the map. And this is an essentially like really good bonus off of this, because you're going to increase your yield from resources that you're mining or you're wood cutting or something like that, and it's going to dramatically help you out when you get stuck or you just need a ton of resources to kind of progress further into the game. So it's always good to kind of, you can see all of these different blood types on the screen right now, and it's just good to know about all these different types that are in the game and to be kind of aware of what type you need to kind of progress in the stage you are in the game. So are you fighting different V Rising bosses? Maybe you need some sort of attack blood, something there, or are you just doing more resource farming or something of that nature? Or do you just like using spells? And that's where the scholar actually comes into play. Some of these spells, you can reduce your cooldown time hammers, which do help. All right, so moving on to tip number 6, and this is going to be really being aware of what weapons you are using for what job you are trying to do. So we can see currently we have this simple workbench, and if you really take a look, you have axes, spears, mace, we have a crossbow, and we also have the sword. But if you really take a look at all these weapons, you will start to notice that they have physical damage towards minerals, creatures, vegetation. So depending on what you're trying to farm or what you're trying to kill, you need to be aware that you might need to be switching up your weapon for this. Now, a lot of people get really comfortable with using one weapon, but you know, if you're trying to cut down some trees or vegetation, you might be wanting to use a sword for the vegetation, the axes for the trees. So you need to be aware that you need these probably on your character at all times so that you can kind of flip through depending on what you're trying to farm or just what's near you. So just be aware of that while you're progressing through the game. All right, so moving on to tip number 7, and that is going to be watching out and what to do when the sun is out. Now, a lot of guides out there are probably going to just tell you to take the time when it's sun out to just play around in your base, do a lot of your crafting and things like that while it's sunny out. I, for one, really wasn't scared of the sun, and you could see that even the smallest shadows you can start to hide behind and kind of cool off before you progress a little bit more. And this is also where those wolf forms can help you out, or if you're in a little bit later stages of the game, a horse can even help you out. But we can see we could just even hide behind that smallest shadow of a rock. So don't be afraid to go out in the sun. Use all the shadows you possibly can. There's all sorts of them out there, and like I said, even the tiniest shadow can actually save you. All right, so moving on to tip number 8, and now we're going to actually be taking a look at a little bit of a combat skill here. So we're going to go ahead and attack this militia light here, and we can see that we shot him with the arrow, but we have the ability to feed and, you know, take his blood. But maybe we don't want to take the blood. Maybe we just want to finish him off, because actually you can start to feed on characters when I think they're at like 25%, somewhere around that area of health. You can actually start to feed off of them, and this is a quick way to kind of finish off enemies, especially if there's like quite a few like this. Sometimes I'll just use that to, you know, kind of remove them out of the way. So what you do is you hit feed and then you click on your mouse button, and then that will cancel the feed but just instantly kill the enemy instead. So this is just one of those quick little tips, especially if you're fighting in the groups of 3 enemies that are constantly wandering around. It's an easy way to thin them out a little bit easier and just give yourself a little bit better of a fighting chance if there's someone like this where you're fighting a skulled enemy and you don't know what level they actually are. Alright, so moving on to tip number 9, and now we're going to be taking a look and understanding a little bit more about flooring in V Rising. So we can see here we have a castle heart powering this. We can also say that it is confined in a castle room. So confined in a castle room just means that you have walls around in a 4-corner section. So we're actually in a larger building that has flooring throughout, which gives us a roof. Now, one thing you might say is has matching floor. Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because technically the floor is matching, but what it's really referring to is these wood matching floors. So you have specific floor matching. It's saying that it needs a workshop floor if you look at the fine print. But let's say you have this confined area. Well, you just saw previously that it was still not working until we add another 4th wall to this room. Now we have that floor matching bonus, which gives us negative 25% cost of doing any kind of crafting on this machine. So it's just something to be aware of, that you're going to need those 4 corners. Build that archway at the end so you can get in and out of a room. You can build these rooms and scale them, but you're going to need to make sure that your flooring all does match with that workshop flooring, the alchemy flooring, the tailoring flooring. It really just depending on what you're trying to do, but the device will tell you exactly what you need. So that's just a little bit better understanding of how to make sure you get those flooring bonuses for you. Alright, so here we are with tip number 10, and now we're looking at waygates and kind of understanding them a little bit better. So throughout the world you're going to find these waygates, and you might run into this issue where you can't teleport while carrying resources. So if you hover over items, it'll actually tell you if you cannot be teleported with those items. So If you're having issues and you've unlocked quite a few different portals around and you're just trying to traverse the map a little bit easier and you just keep getting that little red banner of text up there, this is probably what you need to look out for. So you can carry around with brews, you can have your weapons, you can have your armor, and you can go ahead and teleport with those. It's just you can't have any kind of resources. Now I hope in the future they kind of flip this around and allow you to maybe just have base resources to teleport back and forth with, but we'll see. But as of right now, like I said, you're going to be able to just know what you can and cannot teleport with. So if you do run into that issue, this is probably what's going on. Alright, well that was the top 10 tips that I have for V-Rising, kind of starting out. Now I would say some of these might be a little bit more mid-tier tips, but I felt like early on it's good to know about all this stuff, and early on the game really doesn't explain that to you, so I feel like maybe these tips might help you out. So as always guys, if you like this video, think about commenting, and subscribing down below. Now I will be trying to put out a little bit more content on V-Rising, and hopefully in the future we have more games that we can do more videos on. But until then, I will see you in the next one.